Hello everyone, I wanted to talk about intellectual stimulation today and how I want to use it in my future career as a leader, maybe in the classroom or as a principal. And I think this is one of the better eyes in the transformational leadership that can help those students in a classroom or those teachers that you would lead as a principal to think outside the box and be innovative with their thinking. Now I want to talk about Bass and Riggio and how they think intellectual stimulation is. Now they say to stimulate their followers' efforts to be innovative and creative by questioning assumptions, reframing problems, and approaching old solutions in new ways. Now, being creative by questioning assumptions. This is a great point because we need teachers today to not be going off the assumptions of the old way of teaching, but trying to be more innovative and go through the new ways of teaching. Now, reframing problems. Now, this could mean anything from a math classroom to reframing a problem and maybe going a new way of how to teach them, maybe doing it more with hands-on, or maybe doing it through a video, doing it through a music or anything like that. More innovative ways to teach those kids how to do these problems. Or for a social studies classroom, maybe there's a question that says, when did this battle happen? And that's it. Now, for reframing that problem, we want to talk about maybe why did this battle happen? What was the strategic plan for this battle? And maybe after they find that answer, maybe discuss it with their fellow classmates so they get that human connection with what other people think the answer is, and maybe they have another idea that they didn't think of, and then they actually like that idea and they put it along with what they thought of. Now, one of my research articles today that I picked is Teacher Leadership and Intellectual Stimulation, Improving Students' Approach to Studying Through Intrinsic Motivation. Now, this was written by Sam Bolkin, Alan K. Goodboy, and Darren J. Griffin. Now, they said when teachers influence students in intrinsic motivation through the use of intellectually stimulating behavior, students approach their learning in deep strategic ways and are less likely to adapt a surface approach to their studies. Now, to talk about intrinsic motivation. This is the motivation that is hard to come by in an education classroom. You try to get your students to think about what they want to do in that class, and you try to get them to wanting to do it. But a lot of students just come in and they don't want to do it, but you have to build that intrinsic motivation into what you're teaching and make it exciting for them. And when we're talking about strategic ways to adapt a surface approach to the studies, we don't want these kids to just try to get that answer, but we want them to think more deeply about it with intellectual stimulation. Now, for instance, with me, I would have maybe a question that I talked about earlier with the battle. Now, maybe afterwards, I might give them a little project, maybe to go online, find a few videos, maybe watch them about that battle and why it was important to the Civil War or to the World War I, just a different battle, trying to get them to think more deeply about the question at hand. Now, I want them to have these light bulb moments too with intellectual stimulation where they think, wow, this kind of compares to what's happening today. Maybe not with a battle, but maybe with something that's happening in history. Now, one thing that is happening, that is all over the news today, that was happening back in the day, but nobody knew about it, was during World War I, was propaganda. Now, the United States brought in all these things that said, we want you for the U.S. Army, put like Hitler as a big bad man, and put like him doing bad things to other people in posters and pictures and send it out to all the American people. So they wanted the American people to get behind them going to World War I, because before that, a lot of the American people said, why would we be in this war? It doesn't have to deal with us. Now, that is kind of compared to today. Propaganda is the same as fake news. A lot of people think that the news is fake news. Now, this propaganda in today, it compares itself. It's history repeating itself. But we're just comparing, it's not the same thing, but we're comparing how it affected the people back then to how they affected people today in the classroom. It's just one of different examples that have intellectual stimulating and how these students can think about history and compare it to today and get like a hypothesis on why it's happening today, because they have all of the information from before. Now, for my second article, I'm going to talk about leadership, intellectual stimulation, and team learning, the mediating role of a team positive effect. Now I'm going to get these names wrong, so excuse me for that, but it was written by Sanchez, Cardona, Salanova, Soria, and Lorenz Goumba. So what they talked about was promoting a culture for learning and helping to interpret new situations in new ways. Now, I think this is a very positive effect on how intellectual stimulation can be in the classroom by creating a culture for it, by creating a culture of thinking about out-of-the-box situations that might happen for a specific time in history. And this could mean when we're talking about world history and we're talking about the UK and how they took over a bunch of countries and what they would be like today. Maybe this out-of-the-box question would be, what would it be like today if the UK still had all the countries that they had back then? Now, this could make those students think a little bit about how this country could control like a lot of the countries in the world, and how that would affect all those people in those different countries. And this could make them think outside the box and think about how maybe if that happened today, what would happen, what would the people do, and then it would go along with those uprisings that happen in those countries. So just trying to get them to stimulate their minds and trying to make them think outside the box, think a little bit more about the question than what they already are. And I wanted to relate this to Dinnersmith a little bit, because this kind of reminds me of the innovation in that book and how it had a positive effect on those schools that had those innovations. I think intellectual stimulation is a part of that. Intellectual stimulation, out of the box, innovation that is not in every school today, and like all these STEM programs that are coming through schools, and a lot of the other programs with them not learning the traditional way but learning a new way, and the students are thriving in it. I think intellectual stimulation can help a lot. Now, for my third article, I'm going to talk about In Search of Intellectual Stimulation, understanding the relationship between motivation, deep learning, and stimulation in the higher education classroom. Now, this kind of comes back to me with the higher education classroom and what I want to teach in there. Now, this was written by Sandeep Chowdhury and Renata Oswaska. And they talked about how the course content should test the students' understanding, helping them think deeply about the concepts taught in class and come to their conclusions on the course content. So I think this intellectual stimulation in this example in this article could be for any type of classroom. It could be for reading, it could be for English, it could be for math, it could be for social studies, it could be for any type of classroom. Because I think it's talking about how they want those students to think more deeply about the question than what they already are. And it's not an easy task for a teacher to get them to think like that, because a lot of students just want to get it done. But what you have to do is what I said before in my second article, was get that intrinsic motivation into them, that they want to learn about this and they want to think more deeply about that subject. And that is a hard task. But with intellectual stimulation, I think it becomes a little bit easier with the different strategies that come along with it and helps in that classroom. Now, I think that content with them thinking about it deeply, I think it helps along with other classes too if they do it in one class. I think if they get deeply relating to one subject, maybe it's math, and they like math a lot and they think deeply about those problems because they like it so much, I think that has an effect on the other classes that they are in, and it helps them think more on maybe social studies, English, and helps them learn more in those classes as well. So I think this effect, even if you use it in one classroom, which I think you should use it, well, all leaders should use it when they are teaching in class, but if it's only used in one classroom, it helps with other classrooms because these kids get more passionate about school. They get more passionate about subjects they are learning about. Okay, in conclusion today, I wanted to talk about how intellectual stimulation is not the only thing that makes a good leader. There are the other 3 I's in transformational leadership, which are idealized influence, it's bringing those clear values and modeling authenticity to a leader, and then inspirational motivation, giving that vision and sharing it with their people about where they want to go and how they're going to get there, and it just gives them a sense of purpose and drive. And then individualized consideration, having that genuine interest in the people that you are working with or the students you're working with and what they are doing and how they are doing, and maybe not just in school but in life, and being that considerate person. I think all 4 of these make a great leader, but for me individually, I think intellectual stimulation will help me a lot in my social studies classroom later on, and also if I become a principal. Think that those light bulb moments that people have when you're thinking about new, innovative ideas and creating an environment where that is possible, I think that is one of the key necessities in a classroom, and I think this will help me a lot in my future career. And thank you everybody for listening today.